Yes, good afternoon. This is Harlem Network News, and I am Terri Wisdom. And as many of you know, Harlem Network News is a new media platform. We started at the onset of COVID, and we are still here. Very critical the information that we report, because often what happens in major media, what happens here in Harlem and the homes of the world, we're just not informed. And we know that knowledge is power. We have so much going on, from what happened in the pandemic to gun violence, from ourselves, the police. I mean, there's just much that is happening in our community. And it's very important that we stand up. And one of my partners shared something yesterday, and I was like, wow. He was like, in terms of some of the things that are going on with public officials, that during the Roman Empire time, they were appeasing the people with bread and circuses. And he just kind of said this, and I was like, bread and circuses, what are you talking about? So that's what we got to look at. As people of color, we don't want to be appeased by them giving us luncheons and handouts and activities, which kind of covers what is really happening in our community. So I just thought that was very prolific, that even then that was going on. And we still have a lot of that going on now. So we need to stand up, we need to be informed, we need to be engaged. It is Women's History Month, and we celebrate women all year long. But right now, this is called Women's History, so there's a lot of focus on women. And I am very honored to have here today with me our sister Malaak Shabazz. She is the daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X and Haj Malik Shabazz. So this is our women's history. This is our history. So Malaak, would you just introduce yourselves and tell us who you are and who's you?
Well, I just want to say Happy International Women's Day.
All right, all right.
Which is today.
All right.
I'm the youngest daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm. I am an international human rights activist at the United Nations for 26 years. I deal with the North Atlantic slave trade and the African diaspora and women's issues. I continue the legacy of both my parents, mostly my mother. She was a staunch advocate for women's rights and human rights, as well as my father. And at 28, pregnant with me and my twin sister, who transitioned a year ago. She passed away.
Yes, and my condolences.
She's with my parents. Yeah. My mother threw herself pregnant with me on my sisters when my father was assassinated at the Audubon, which is now the Shabazz Center. My eldest sister is the one who remembers, because she was 7.
Okay.
One of the assassins bumped her before they got to my father to shoot. And she remembers exactly what it looks like.
Wow.
I don't care about this exoneration crap. My sister knows. You know what I'm saying? Really don't feel like talking about the lawsuit because it's ongoing. However, all of the culprits aren't in the lawsuit yet. It's not just the city and the state.
Okay, I hear you.
Don't really want to get into it, but the NOI was involved and they can't get a pass when they did the shooting. So we're still discussing it. So basically our attorney, Crump, will be answering further questions, legal questions. My sisters and I are a little too emotional about it.
Okay.
So it needs to be answered responsibly. And so he will be doing that. However, my mother was 28 years old but she raised 6 girls. She already had degrees before she met my father. So she was lucky that she could go back to work. And then she then got 2 PhDs. Who does that?
Right.
And raised 6 girls as best she could. It's not easy. She was the most incredible woman ever. Her, Coretta, and Myrlie Evers, all 3 of them, the wives of the 3 M's, Malcolm, Medgar, and Martin, they don't get the credit that or acknowledgement that they should, because they continued and preserved the legacy of their fallen husbands who were assassinated, and raised the children, and continued. And Auntie Myrlie is the only one so far that's alive now. My mother and Auntie Coretta are her past have transitioned. But they all 3 made sure that their husbands' legacies were represented respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had a legacy in their own right as women.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's what we're speaking about. Yes.
You know, all 3 of them really were an amazing, incredible women. Auntie Coretta, 3 months after Martin was assassinated, started the King Foundation and continued. Myrlie, you know, finally got justice with Mississippi burning when they finally got the white guy who killed her husband.
Wow. And I'm going to stop you just for a second, Malaak. And the reason I'm going to do that is because our age range for Harlem Network News is intergenerational. And I'm sure most everyone is aware of who Dr. Martin Luther King is. They are aware of who your father is, Malcolm X. And after his death, he was even more known. Malcolm X, Haj Malik Shabazz. But you're speaking of Myrlie Evers. Can you tell us who was Medgar Evers? What is the Medgar Evers story?
Medgar Evers was the first field representative for the NAACP back in Mississippi. And he was pre-Martin Luther King. If there wouldn't be a Martin Luther King if there wasn't a Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers, he was assassinated in his driveway in front of Myrlie in Mississippi. But he was pre-Martin. Martin came after.
Okay.
He was before Martin Luther King. He was the man.
Okay.
And he was assassinated at 31. All 3 of them were assassinated before they were 40 years old.
Wow.
But Medgar was the first field rep in the South that was frightening. And a lot of people don't know Myrlie Evers Williams, and she had to leave. She moved to California. She left Mississippi. I don't blame her. Had to send her children away and scrub the blood of her husband off the driveway so her children wouldn't be traumatized. Now, what does that say? She scrubbed her husband's blood off the driveway before her children could come back, so they wouldn't see it.
Wow.
That I know that a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful, and I thank you for just sharing, because a lot of times
that takes strength.
Yes, our history is not told, so I really wanted to highlight that. And it appears, and this is from a movie, seeing the movie Till, I believe that Emmett Till's mother actually stayed with Medgar and Myrlie Evers at some point during that journey. So there's a
Yes.
lot of cross connections
Yes.
that have happened. But like you said, we're highlighting the strength of women. And in this Women's History Day, we're pre-recorded, but it's very iconic that we're speaking on this day. And we're speaking about your mother, and we're speaking about
my father being assassinated in front of her, with her being pregnant with me and my twin sister, 2 months, and throwing her body over my younger sister, my other sisters at the Audubon, to try to protect them, and she's pregnant.
Yeah. So
with gunshots. But fast forward, the Audubon Ballroom, she turned something of tragedy into triumph in education, and it's now the Malcolm X Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial Educational Center.
Okay.
So we can understand our history, understand him. She wanted to make sure people knew exactly who he was, and not the Melanin Challenge media that portrayed him in the beginning.
Okay.
And all three women, we all grew up together, the children. We all got along. Coretta and Merle, they're my aunties.
I love it. I love it.
So they're my aunties. A lot of people don't know that. Before my mother passed in the unfortunate fire, she, Auntie Merle and Auntie Coretta were booked for an international tour for 2 years.
Wow.
And they were called the Wives of the 3 M's, Malcolm, Medgar, and Martin.
How powerful.
And when my mother died, Auntie Merle and Coretta said they couldn't do it without her, so they canceled. They canceled the tour. But it would have been extremely powerful for those 3 women to go on tour to talk about their husbands. Yes. My goodness. Amazing.
And their lives and all the things
and what they accomplished in their own right.
Yeah. I love this is Harlem Network News for those of you who are just joining us. And in celebration of Women's History Day, Women's History Month, and we celebrate ourselves and women every day, 365 days a year. Very critical. But I love the collectiveness that has happened. And I was mentioning to you the fact that I know that your elder sister, who is Ambassador Shabazz, Ambassador Attila Shabazz, and Dr. King's daughter, Yolanda, actually did a play several years back about
No.
Let me get it right.
They had a theater company for 15 years together.
Whoa.
Stepping into Tomorrow.
Wow.
It wasn't just a play.
Wow. What was the name of the theater company? Please share.
Stepping Into Tomorrow.
Wow. Okay.
For 15 years.
Wow. Okay. Well,
and it was all about Black theater, spoken word, speaking about our own history, because they both, being the oldest, had first knowledge of, they were the eldest of both families. So they knew what they were talking about. Attila, Ambassador Shabazz, her godfather was Alex Haley.
Wow. Okay.
My second sister's godfather was Gordon Parks.
Okay.
So Harry Belafonte was uncle. Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee was auntie, uncle. We were blessed in the circle of political activists that protected and surrounded us. And we grew up with their children. Dick Gregory was uncle.
Okay.
With him and his 10 kids on the farm.
Okay.
I can go on and on about James Baldwin changed my diapers.
Okay. So you were blessed.
We were blessed with people who were in the movement who experienced it and protected us. And we also were raised with their children. So we had an understanding and an education, a reality. I couldn't come home with less than a B plus. My mother was not playing, but I went to library camp. I read. Kids, the children, the youth today, they don't read anymore. They're on Google. When they really need to go back and start reading our books, and understanding what the African diaspora authors had to go through and write and understand, research and our real history, not movies.
Right.
They're watching movies.
Right.
And the movies are generally, unfortunately, not produced by people of color. When I grew up, my mother took us to Black theater, Black movies. I was lucky to know Uncle Harry and Gordon and James Baldwin and Miles Davis and Duke Ellington. We were blessed. Nowadays, unfortunately, and I'm original hip hop, and I'm glad the new hip hop museum is opening. And Ice-T says hip hop has gray hair. Yeah, well, so do I. The new, now it's rap, and it's unfortunately perverted by white producers. When I was growing up, hip hop, everybody listened to jazz, blues. We grew up with real music. Now their music is psychedelic. It doesn't make any sense. And unfortunately, they're not respecting themselves as men and women by wearing the pants down or booty, booty, bang, bang. And that's not what hip hop is about. But unfortunately, when Robert Johnson sold B2 to Viacom, there was no more Black entertainment TV. We need our own networks. Like what you're doing right now. You're independent, but we need our own national networks that projects our image, our history. And so I'm honored that my mother, she's the reason why Medgar Evers is the only historical Black college in the state of New York.
Right.
We only have one, but at least we have one.
Speak a little bit about Medgar Evers and Medgar Evers College, which is in Brooklyn, New York, and about your mother's connection, what she taught there, what she was able to bring to that venue and that forum, because she was an educator. I believe initially she was in the health field,
public health administration, yes. And she was also a former nurse.
Wow. Okay.
When she was married to my father, and then he passed away, she went back to the hospital working because she had to work. She had 6 girls to take care of.
Absolutely.
But she was a nurse before she married. So she was always into nursing and health education. Excuse me. Holistic. Halal.
Okay.
She was very much so. And but we really was in childhood education. That was really one of her passions.
Education.
Absolutely. Education was absolutely the most important thing for her. However, it was for us, by us, and we know to learn our own history, not perverted history. A lot of us, and now that they're talking about, it's an issue now on the news about incorporating African-American history into schools, which it should have been in the first place.
Absolutely. It's all American history. We built this country.
Absolutely. We built the White House. Police are ready. But it shouldn't even have to be an issue that we have to incorporate African-American history in schools when it should be there in the first place.
Yes.
It's not just about George Washington. or Abraham Lincoln. And they need to tell a real story about Thomas Jefferson. You know, that wasn't a love story. She had no choice.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? She did what she had to do. But he was married to her half sister. Did you know that?
No, there's so much that we don't know.
The first lady was the half sister. So, I mean,
of Jefferson's black daughter.
You know, we really need to learn. We need to read. We can't keep going to movies, and most of the stuff is produced by Jews in Hollywood. Now they can talk about their history, but when it comes to our history, nobody wants to hear about it.
Right. Yeah. No.
Because they're responsible for the North Atlantic slave trade and all the violence. We came under the boat, not on the boat. And that's what they don't even. These young kids don't know, and they don't know that, but they're not being taught in school.
Yeah, no, it's very important. And that's why, for those of you who are just joining us, this is our onset of Women's History Month, Women's History Year, Women's History, Black Women's History. I'm Terri Wisdom, and I'm here with Malaak Shabazz, who is the youngest daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X, Haj Malik Shabazz. So very critical conversations. And I thank you, Malaak, for your insight, speaking about hip hop and, you know, where it has gone. You know, very, very critical. People do, young people do need to understand that there are people at the top that are marionetting what is going to come out, what's not going to come out. And this violent, sexually abusive use of the music is very, very, very detrimental. Music and arts are very empowering. So it impacts how people think, what people do. And pretty much we have to reclaim our children and reclaim our community. And Harlem Network News is very dedicated to young people getting this knowledge. So that
we need to reclaim our children. We need to reclaim our children.
Yes, yes.
They're being misled, especially via the media.
Absolutely. And that's why Harlem Network News is so important. We do everything we can to spread the word. And we also don't try to have things fly by, because we understand that there are young people in our community who never even heard of James Brown, you know, who's a major, iconic music person. So there's a lot that is unknown about our history, and it's our job to teach it, because that helps people to have a good sense of their self, good self-esteem. One of the things that I was—
You know what, let me just say this.
Yes,
they're unfortunately being miseducated by Jay-Z and Puffy.
I hear you, sister.
I'm just putting it out there.
I hear you.
They are not contributing to the African diaspora. You know what I'm saying? When we talk about Harlem and the gentrification, these people got successful and moved to New Jersey. And when they could have reinvested in our own community instead of it being bought by the Asians and the Jews.
Yeah.
We can't, you know, we didn't reinvest. They left. They had the money. They're worth 250 million, 450 million. And what did they do to reinvest or to repurchase our community?
No.
They didn't.
It's very important, especially now that we speak truth to power. And as it's Women's History Month, a lot of that truth and a lot of that power can come from the women. But we cannot pretend any longer that everything's okay, because everything's not okay. And the majority of our community are suffering. They are impoverished. We have
mentally
ill, using drugs due to all kinds of stresses. And also the fact that drugs are influxed into our community. you know, and so that's what's going on. And it's a huge destroyer. So we have got to hold all of everyone accountable. We've got to hold ourselves accountable. We've got to hold our public officials accountable. We've got to hold whoever the iconic figures are, you know, in whatever areas they're in, be it entertainment, be it sports, be it law, you know, those that have got to be held accountable to give back and infuse the community. Everything is not okay. You know, it's far from okay.
It's far from okay. Not, and also financially, you know, the ones who have it aren't giving it.
Yeah. And that's how things happen. Those that make it have to hold the door open for the other person and have to give back and have to build. You know,
it's like, for instance, okay, I'm gonna put it out there. I'm an international human rights activist at the United Nations. I deal with North Atlantic slave trade. I know the 13 countries, European countries, who were involved. Can't say they weren't. Right. Barclays Bank funded the North Atlantic slave trade. And they are all over the place and not being made accountable. And yet Jay-Z is a partner with the Nets at the Barclays Bank. How is that? Does that make any sense to you? What is Beyonce doing? Nothing.
Yeah, we've got to understand what the paper trail is. We got to understand what the paper trail is.
I can't even go to Barclays Bank at Barclays. I can't go. But they funded the North Atlantic slave trade, and they're on every other corner like Starbucks.
No,
and we're still patroning them. Why?
Patronizing. Yeah, no, it's true. You know, we've got to begin to stand up. We've got to begin to be conscious.
We're patronizing people who have raped us.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
And and these youth, they don't know it. They don't know their history. They don't know who did what.
Yeah, very.
You know what I'm saying? They don't know who started it and who's still, you know, Nike is human rights violators, and their factories are in India. I can't even wear it. I won't even look at a Nike.
No,
you know, and they're involved with a lot of trafficking. But we still buy Nike.
Right. No, I mean, it's Harlem Network News, and you were speaking truth to power. In your capacity, because I know that you represent the legacy of your mother and your father, and of course, all of your ancestors. But would you just tell us some of the things that you've encountered, you know, in your UN capacity, and some of the things that are happening with women in Africa and in our diaspora, and what some of the factors are that need to be addressed and the best way to address them in your purpose?
Well, one thing is the trafficking in West Africa, especially with the Nigerians. And we're trying to stop that. Nobody would know about it unless it was I knew about it, but it didn't go national until Michelle Obama said something.
Okay.
And we really have to protect the young girl child globally. You know, this is Women's Month, but we need to start looking at the young girls globally and how they're being trafficked and mistreated and not educated.
Okay. So when you speak of trafficking, because that has become a catchword, what does trafficking really mean, and what is actually happening?
What they're doing is they're kidnapping, gathering young girls and selling them. Some are 14, 15, have no choice, and are getting married to 80-year-old men. That's disgusting.
Wow.
You know, they're just being sold off, and they want young flesh. And that has been a problem for a very long time. For instance, Osama bin Laden when he was in Afghanistan, he was under protection of a warlord. And when he left, he gave the warlord one of his 14-year-old daughters.
Wow.
That's disgusting.
Wow.
No,
wow.
but that happens. That's normal. If girls want to learn how to be educated, they get thrown acid on or something. Or they're abused. This has been going on for quite some time. And the UN the women's movement has been addressing it aggressively. But unfortunately, we don't see it in the news.
Yeah, no, it's very, very important, because I know we were at an event the other night, and they were highlighting one of the empresses of Ethiopia that was very instrumental in fighting back the Italians and stopping the colonial situation. But these are all things that we don't hear. And then we went on to just speak about the atrocity of the war that's happening in Ethiopia even now, but we don't hear about that. We're only hearing about Ukraine, so it's very selective, the news that we're hearing, so it's very important that we do everything we can to do deep digging and then to get the word out there so that people understand what's happening. Now,
they are not focusing on the issues in Africa at all.
Right.
I mean, Africa doesn't get brought up. The Cameroon, there's Asians that moved in, and now they want their own community. They want their they want rights. They're not African. You moved here. But now they've taken over certain properties. The Asians were in Angola. They finally got pushed out, but they were taking the wood. They have special wood in Angola, apparently. And they were importing Chinese workers and not hiring Africans.
And Africa is the gold mine of the world. In many, many ways of the world.
The UN did a survey about 10 years ago on all the continents. And the world can live on the resources of Africa an infinitum. The entire world, we can live off of the resources in that continent. That's why Africa needs they needed to get together. They need to unite. Not all of them get along.
Right. Different
and
countries,
that's the
people,
problem,
different tribes.
that Europeans and Asians can come in and take our resources. Corporations can come in and take our resources. And it's unfortunate.
We have a lot to deal with. And as women, as we are the mothers of the earth, as we speak about Women's History Month, as we are the teachers, the first teachers of the male child and the female child, we have a great and a huge responsibility.
Absolutely.
Responsibility. What do you think about the status of women here in America in terms of where we are and the direction that we're moving and some of the issues that we have to address? And I know that's a very broad question. This is Harlem Network News. I'm Terri Wisdom, and I'm here with our Sister Malaak Shabazz, daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm X, Haj Malik Shabazz. So just a thought on that, because I think it's very critical. Where are we?
I think it's there's some issues with the young women now, this generation. They don't respect themselves. They're being miseducated and misled by media. When I was growing up, I was so happy to be a young girl child, African diaspora. These young girls just, through the media, don't respect themselves anymore. And we need to figure out how we're going to change that around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's frightening.
Mm-hmm.
The way they dress, the way they talk,
Mm-hmm.
how they present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't respect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They think they do, but they're not. They think they're being hip and cool, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
even the way they dress. I mean, oh,
Mm-hmm.
but the young men don't either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the young girl; it's the young men as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we can't separate the two. It's both young men and young women. We can't choose between the two.
Mm-hmm.
They both need to respect each other.
Mm-hmm. I think it all ends up to getting back to consciousness, to knowing yourself. I know in my generation, and I know that our honorable Marcus Garvey always spoke about the circumstances will, determine what you're going to do. I'm paraphrasing. And so our generation was very active because the war in Vietnam was happening.
Right.
The Black Power movement happened. And when I really realized in my early to late teens, I actually witnessed the 3 assassinations plus. That happened in my generation. We saw President Kennedy assassinated. We saw his brother, Robert Kennedy, assassinated. We saw Medgar Evers assassinated. Dr. King assassinated. Malcolm X assassinated. All of these assassinations were part of my growing up, and that's not a normal thing. You know what I'm saying? When you think about it, I mean, and this is all in a span of about 6 years. So I think
in a span of about 6 years. Yeah. Exactly.
So that kind of determined a direction that my generation would be in. But we also know that there are influences. We know that there was, and it's very interesting because there was a Black is Beautiful movement that came out of AJAZ, and there were the Grandassa models, and there was the Marcus Garvey movement that Carlos Cooks and took over. And I didn't realize they had a conference in 1959 where they decided that we would call ourselves Black and of African descent as opposed to Negro or colored. That was a consciousness, and I think in the early 70s, we were at that consciousness, but I think that a lot of our leaders, the Panthers, were taken out, co-opted. There was, a lot of infiltration by the government. And I sustained, as Bill Scott Heron, who was actually a classmate of mine, it became Winter in America. That's exactly what happened. All of the movement that we were making as youth was just rolled back, But I feel that in this time and in this generation, this new generation of young teens, some of their eyes are being opened, by what they've seen. We've had horrific things that have happened, from George Floyd to Breonna Taylor to, actually seeing some.
And the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes. Yeah. So they've kind of seen that and seen what that has meant and getting some degree of consciousness, from it. But in your purview as the daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz, as a woman who shared a family with 6 sisters, that's a lot of female energy. What, from your stance, do you think are some of the things that can happen to uplift women, for us to begin to take up that mantle and take up that change? Because we know we come from greatness. And it could be one thing, one small thing.
It has to be community involvement. Mm-hmm. We have to get back to the community. My mother was so 100% community. I don't know anything else. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these people are not community involvement. They're selfish. They're doing their own thing. We need to get back to the African diaspora and Blackness and loving ourselves and reaching out to each other and helping each other and not condemning each other and killing each other like we're doing. Mm-hmm. There's more killing in the Black community, and it's disheartening. We're killing each other.
It's extreme.
No, it's at an all-time high. We're doing it. It's a fact. We're killing ourselves.
Yeah, which is complex. And I believe a part of what I call systemic racism. You know, as many people know, because I speak about it, my son on November 5th, 2021, was shot and killed on the Shinnecock Reservation. We don't know who did it. We don't know why. But I'm working to solve that crime. But what I do say is it's not the bullet that killed him, it's systemic racism. And that's really what that is. That's self-hatred. That is like the brother that was pulled out of the car and beaten to death by 5 Black police.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, please. What is that? You know what I'm saying? But what we've got to say is, first of all, the media exploited that. You know, we know that there have been overseers when there was slavery, and they beat the slaves worse than the master did. So we understand that that is self-hatred. We know that there was, quote, Willie Lynch, who, went against all the Black people, in the whole slave mindset. So we're in a post-slave trauma thing, but we've also got to look at how the media is portraying this, because there were 5 Black cops, and that was just horrific. It was just horrendous. They were shouting, they were cursing at him. I mean, it was crazy. But there were white officers there also, and they were a part of it. There were white MPNT people that never got out the car to help him for 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? But that is not being reported. What's being portrayed is there's 5 Black cops that did this, and they're going to lose all their job and everything. So I don't know what happened to the white ones, but in balanced reporting, it should have been reported. It wasn't only Black ones out.
Oh no, they're milking the Black abuse.
Yeah. So we got to look at what's going on and then understand and read between the lines. So very, very important. Yeah. So we have a lot to deal with, but I'm just bowled over by your strength. I know that your family has had extreme losses, and you all are still standing up. You're still doing the work, and obviously you were well trained. Yeah,
well, we get the strength from Dr. Betty. Hello. We get it from my mother. I mean, I don't know how she did it, but she did it. She was 28 years old, Terry. 28. 4 kids and pregnant.
Wow. So what are some of the values that your mother instilled in you? How did she grow up that brought her to just have this empowerment?
How did she grow up?
Yes. What was instilled in her early days?
Well, my mother was a Black Indian. And she was adopted by African Americans.
Okay.
Her parents were graduates from Tuskegee.
Okay.
They were conservative Zion Methodists in Detroit. And she went to Tuskegee and decided she didn't like looking at strange fruit.
Wow.
Because she had to take the bus from Detroit to Alabama. And past DC, all of a sudden, she started seeing strange fruit.
Meaning Black men being hung.
If the youth does not understand what I mean by strange fruit, I mean Black men hanging from the trees. That's what strange fruit. You know Nina Simone?
Oh, yeah.
Her song? Well, they don't know Nina Simone either. They don't know James Brown.
Right.
But
singer, activist, Nina Simone, Billie Holiday, singer, activist, speaking about strange fruit as well.
So after 2 years, my mother said, I can't take this anymore. And she moved in with my Aunt Ruth and went to finish nursing school in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And that's where I think her heart started to warm up to Brooklyn. So when she finished school, she married my father. you know, she did what she had to do, but ended up back at Medgar Evers in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And was a professor. And then before she passed, she was a dean.
Mm-hmm.
She became a dean. She went from professor to being a dean
Beautiful.
of the college.
Okay.
But it's funny. I think Mayor Adams was one of her teachers. I think he claims he took a couple of courses from my mother.
Okay.
The
Wow.
mayor.
Okay.
There's a few people, but they all know. He always said, your mother always used to say, "Am I clear?" You could not leave her classroom without being clear.
Okay.
So he used to say, your mother said, "Am I clear?"
Okay.
And he was like, "Yes, ma'am." Now he's the mayor. Now he's the mayor.
Okay. I love it. I love it. And he was one of her students. I love it. That's a great story. I know my partner, who's very instrumental in helping put Harlem Network News together, Bernardo Ruby, has spoken about meeting your mother in Ghana when he was at the university over there. And I guess, students, she may have been going for, an advanced degree, but, he was there as a young, early college student. And he said often, people shared lunch tables, and he remembers your mother being there.
Oh, no, yeah, my mother was very good friends with the late former General President Rawlings.
Okay.
They were, yeah. My mother had sent me to Ghana with Operation Crossroads Africa, which is older than the Peace Corps.
Yes.
In 1987. But I was given a different name because we were supposed to be anonymous.
I see. Gotcha.
So my name was Abinata, twin girl born on Tuesday. I'm the second twin.
Abinata, I love it.
Yeah. So I couldn't meet him then. Well, 2018, I went back to Ghana. I've been back at least 15 times, but the last trip was in 2018 for the right of return. I was going to get my dual citizenship before COVID hit.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but then COVID hit. I have not left Manhattan. But I went there for the conference, and Gerald Rawlings, he's the only African president that I know that retired. Okay. He said, "I'm done." All the rest of them had to skip town or go into exile.
Right. Okay. Tell it.
I was there for the conference, and he found out I was there, and he hosted me.
Oh.
So I got to see him before he passed away a year later.
Okay.
And in his office, he had the original framed boxing gloves of Muhammad Ali when he did Rumble in the Jungle.
Okay.
Muhammad Ali was an advocate, also a peace advocate at the United Nations. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't. So thank you for sharing. And
Muhammad Ali, towards the end of his life,
you heard it here.
10 years, he was a peace advocate for the United Nations.
Wow. Okay. So you heard it first here on Harlem Network News. So Malaak, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for being the embodiment of women's history. With your mother, your father, their partnership, the legacy. I know that you always state, no, my mother and father were partners. They were equally yoked. My mother helped to inspire my father to do things. And I just—
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were side by side. She wasn't behind him.
So that's a very empowering thing. And then just the fact of growing up in a family of women, of 6 girls, with your mom at the helm, that's an empowering thing.
And health was also, to her, health was always very important. He was anemic, and she cured him of anemia. How about that?
Wow. Okay.
Hello.
You're sharing.
I thought everybody had a juicer growing up.
Okay.
I was juicing young. You know, the one with the wooden pummel.
Okay.
The old school ones.
Okay.
My mother had us juicing early.
Okay.
All these stores now. This is a joke. This is a new bet. These are new jacks. I was juicing since I was young.
Okay. Okay. I hear you. I hear you. Very, very critical. Well, thank you for sharing.
Health is also very important in the Black community. Unfortunately, my twin sister, who did not take care of herself, died of diabetes.
Ah, okay.
Diabetes is really prominent in the Black community, and I implore Black folks, eat well, drink water, and watch your sugar, and don't eat McDonald's.
Okay.
You know, eat vegetables, fruits, nuts. We don't take care of ourselves. We have to eat right. We're killing ourselves, and we can't blame white people. Excuse me, melanin challenged people.
Okay.
So I just implore people, eat well. If you can't go to the gym, take a walk around the block, do something. But we have to take care of ourselves and be responsible for ourselves, and not blame everybody. We can blame them for the things that they have done, but as far as personally, we need to take care of our own bodies and our own mental health. Absolutely. We need to take responsibility for ourselves.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That's it's what very critical.
My mother, that's what was my mother instilled in us. I mean, and she did it up until the day she unfortunately passed away in the fire. She implored us to be responsible for yourself. Take care of yourself. You can't blame somebody if you're wrong. Not everybody's wrong. Sometimes we have to take responsibility for our own behavior. And I really just implore the youth, stop shooting each other shit. I mean, we need to stop killing each other. We should love each other. We're Black.
Right.
You know, they want to be us. You know, they're getting butt implants, lip implants, wearing locks. That means they want to be us, and we're turning around having blonde hair. That don't make no sense. I'm so happy to be locked, black, and nappy. I'm proud. My mother, when she sent me to Africa, my life changed. I was 21 years old, and this wasn't the Jungle Book watching movies anymore. I saw it for myself. I saw Africa for myself. I saw the richness and the poverty. I saw both. I saw the richness and the poverty. I saw the holding cells in Ghana, and then I saw El Goree Island in Senegal. When I was in Africa, in Ghana, they gave me Abinata. They should have called me Yashantawa. I wanted that name. But they wouldn't give it to me. They gave it to somebody else. She wasn't worthy.
Okay.
She wasn't worthy. But Yashantawa, if you know, beat the crap out of the British.
Yeah.
At 67.
Yes.
She was 67 and kicked their behinds. The men didn't do it. It was the warrior women. And there are a lot of warrior women. I mean, I like this movie that's out now with Viola Davis, but I mean, they need to show more of us.
Right. That
wasn't the only one. There were so many incredible warrior women. It wasn't just the men. We were warriors too. We were warriors. And we were mothers and warriors. And chiefess.
Yes.
And empresses.
Yes.
I mean, and we were fabulous and beautiful and lovely at the same time.
Okay.
You know, but they need to know about, it wasn't just Yashantawa, there's so many different women that were so incredible that we need to start talking about that.
Right. And fashioning ourselves. These are the things that our young women need to know. So we're going to wind down. This is Harlem Network News, and I thank you, Malaak. just for
I
your
thank you for
vast,
having me.
I thank you for your vast knowledge, your intelligence, your experience, your resilience. And if you would just give us a closing statement, something you'd like people to remember, your mother, your father, your family, your legacy. Just a brief closing statement. You pretty much said it all.
Well, we're trying to not disrespect the legacy of my father, but my mother. We would not have the Shabazz Center, Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial Educational Center, if it wasn't for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so we honor that, and we hope people come, see the center, see the legacy that she left, the house that Dr. Betty built, but she was also an adamant educator, not only for the African diaspora, but for the girl child, because globally, that's not happening. It's happening here, but on a global level, it's not. And so she was an advocate for women, especially for Native American women. She used to speak at Bear Butte when they had the conference every year in South Dakota.
Wow. What tribe was she from? Or
her mother was Blackfoot, her father was Cherokee.
All right.
And when she went to speak there, they thought she was coming to speak because she was the wife of. And when she got up there to speak, she said, let me tell you something, because unfortunately on reservations, women's rights are not being taken care of. The women are being taken care of a lot on the reservations. And so she came to speak about the rights of women in the Native American community.
Okay.
And that shocked the crap out of them, because they thought she was an African American. She said, I'm Blackfoot and Cherokee.
Okay.
And she let them know. They had no idea. But she was also advocating for the rights of the Native American woman.
Okay.
So she didn't just advocate for African diaspora, she was also advocating for women globally.
Yes.
But when she rolled up in Bear Butte at that conference, she nailed them. They had no idea. And it was powerful. Yes. And the women loved it because they did not have an advocate for them, someone to speak for them. So she spoke about women, Islamic women. She spoke about women, period. She didn't discriminate.
Right. No, it's a blessing. And it's interesting. We're going to wrap this up, but it's interesting when you were speaking about women in education in this country, because I think we also have something else going on in this country. If we look at our universities, even our HBCUs, I can speak specifically for Howard University, we have, the numbers are off. We have a lot of Black women and very few Black men in our universities. And some of that may have to do, it has to do with the incarceration. It has to do with the death. It has to do with the drugs. And I think in this country, we've got to try to put more of an infusion of education for our young Black men and our young Black women.
Right,
so that there will be a yoke between the educated Black woman and the educated Black man, so we can push forward. Education is key.
Let me just say this. We need to say young Black men and women together instead of separating them.
Yes, yes.
They, we can't choose. They have to be together. It's not just one or the other. It's both. It's both men and the young Black men and women. But you're right about incarceration. But some of these young women are getting incarcerated too.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So
that's got to end.
Yeah, much to
talk. It should be education, not incarceration.
Yes, education, and no prison, the pipeline. And so thank you, Malaak. I'm inspired. And as you stand, I stand. And please keep us posted and let us know what's next for Malaak Shabazz. So thank you.
And I will update you on, I can't speak about it now, but I will update you on the case.
Okay.
But right now, legally, I can't speak about it. But you will be the first to know when I get some info.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
You'll have me back.
I will. Absolutely. You'll always have a place and a voice here. Harlem Network News coming to you live. And please join us, spread the word. We ask you, audience, to support us. You can go to harlemnetworknews.com and donate if you have information, if you have stories. Please come if you have skills. We'd love to work with you. Terri Wisdom, Harlem Network News, and stand firm, Malaak Shabazz. I love it.
Thank you.
You got this. Take care. Have a blessed day.
You have a blessed day as well.
All right. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day, all.
Happy International Women's Day.
All right.
and go to the ShabazzCenter.org and join.
Okay. Yes, please do. Please do.
Join our mailing
list. Thank you for that. And that's right there across from the Children's Hospital with Columbia Presbyterian. It's right there on about 163rd and Broadway.
3940 Broadway, 165th Street.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. It's right here in our community. Unity in our community, the Shabazz Center. And it's beautiful. Beautiful murals.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you. And we have a lot we got to preserve. And I know I said we're going, but we've got to preserve our iconic things. There's we're going to be talking more about it, but there's a wonderful mural in Harlem Hospital, the Liberian mural. And it is, some repairs have to come to it, but there's been some discussion from it being removed from Harlem Hospital. And we need that mural to stay in Harlem Hospital. It is part of the healing, part of the patient experience. And we can't have our iconic things taken out of our community.
Like the National Black Theater, like Lennox Lounge.
Yes, I mean, other people can't come from other places that don't know our community and make decisions for us as to what should happen. So I want to just leave on that note. We will be imploring you to stand for the Liberian mural in Harlem Hospital that tells the story, Africa as it was. The Africans, they didn't leave voluntarily. They were freed slaves, so they were forced to leave. And then they had to go to Africa and sit down with the kings and queens to be allowed to stay there. And then henceforth form the First Nation of Liberia. This is our history. It's told in 18 panels. What better place for it to be? And it was donated by the family on loan. So we can't have our things removed. We have to stand and we have to support all of our iconic, statues and memoirs of life. And certainly the Shabazz Center represents that.
We have a lovely statue of my father, and the mural is beautiful.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I was just there. Our borough president had an event there for Black entrepreneurs. So very important. So frequent. We got to support. We got to stand up. Harlem
Absolutely.
Coming to you live. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And healing. Take care.